See to it that you sit comfortably and close your eyes. And just recognize this moment as it is. Whatever ideas you have about meditation and what it means to be sitting with closed eyes, just leave that for now. Just recognize this. The experience that is now. The complete acceptance of this moment is meditation. It's very simple to describe, but difficult to grasp if you don't experience it. It's not a philosophy. It's not an intellectual game. It is the simple witnessing of the present. To the egoic mind, it sounds like nothing. It might even sound like a waste of time. But if you practice, if you sit with this moment as it is, you will recognize the beauty of being. It is something that you have experienced before. Because in every moment you had of true contentment is the acceptance of the present. What we might refer to as happiness. And if it is this simple, why don't you just stay here always? Because the identification with the egoic mind is meddlesome. It wants to grasp. It wants to keep. with all the time desires and hopes. It's restless, never content. To many people, what we're doing here would sound like a sort of torture. Just waiting, but not for something in particular. I think that is many people's worst nightmare. But in order to change the relationship to the mind, you must come back to this beingness. It's not that you have to change the egoic mind or fix it somehow, make it more pliable or anything like that. It's just if you rest in your beingness, it will just simplify. The duality of the egoic mind will not be so pronounced. You will stop the constant internal turmoil that is normal to most people. You will start to recognize that there is space between thoughts. And in this space, there is a chance to really breathe. Not the kind of breath that takes oxygen. It's a different kind of oxygen. It's a breath of freedom. And in this freedom, in this breath, is our inherent playfulness. Things are allowed to be fresh again. Stale emotions can shift quickly again, as they should. When the stiffness of trying to control and categorize is gone. Emptiness itself can dance and move. These are the qualities of being. There's nothing to do. You just witness the experience. See how bodily sensation, thoughts, emotions, how it all unfolds. You see how everything is just happening. You might be drawn into your mind, into your thinking, identifying with thoughts again. But come back to just noticing that there is thinking. Recognize that you can be aware, that you can stay as awareness. It's like moving your focus from the clouds to the sky itself. As soon as you identify with thought, you become something. You become the thinker. The one relating to the thought. So in actuality, you create two thoughts. The thought of you and the thought of the thought. But you are not the thinker. You are awareness itself. You are the sky that can recognize that there is thinking. This recognition creates space. Creates distance between the observed and the observer. This is your first freedom in meditation, this witnessing. Just noticing that you don't have to be drawn into every thought, that you don't have to meddle, you don't have to control it, you don't have to categorize it, you don't have to fix it. Notice. Recognize the natural movement of things. The three natural stages that every phenomena has. Creation, sustain for a while, and then destruction or the end. Every thought comes, stays for a while and goes. Every sensation has this quality, always changeful, always transient. Even the experience of the body seems solid, seems to come back time and time again, but is entirely changeful. The experience of it changes. It goes away in deep sleep. Recognize these qualities of the experience. Notice how everything moves. You can open your eyes slowly, move your body. Meditation has a strange quality in one sense. Because most experiences, if you eat a delicious meal, you remember how it tasted. And you can carry that with you. But in meditation, it seems like even if you experience deep meditation, you can completely forget about it. It can be lost. You're identified with your thoughts and it feels like it's nowhere to be found. cannot be remembered like a meal. And on a day where you're completely taken by your mind, you doubt if it even works. Have I really been in that meditative state? I don't know. Seems so far away. But when we recognize it time and time again, it also seeps into everything. The momentum of it. The stillness comes by itself. It comes whether you like it or not. Because the mind will also resist it. Because we have to be very clear how the egoic mind operates. It likes pain and pleasure. It says things like, you have to be sad in order to experience happiness. Stupid things like that. This is the play of the egoic mind. Because our happiness is not a thing like sadness. Have you recognized? Because you might think that they're equals. Sadness, happiness, two emotions, sounds equal. But they're not. Because one is the clouds and one is the sky. Sadness just obscures happiness for a short while. If sadness goes, happiness is automatically there. It's not another thing that competes with sadness. It's not another cloud. It is the sky itself. They're not on the same plane. They're not on the same level. But most people relate to them as emotion and emotion. And I'm just saying, look, see what happens when sadness goes. Is it replaced by another cloud, or is it the sky itself? Do you have to do anything to uphold happiness? Because sadness have to be upheld. It has to be believed in, and it has to have a continuous story. It has to have investment in it. Look. So, when we talk about accepting the present moment, or just being, all those things are the same. They're the same quality. Happiness, freedom, beingness, whatever you want to call it. That is what is in the background of everything. But for most people, their experience is a continuation of thoughts on thoughts on thoughts on beliefs, all these things. There is no space anywhere. And this is what we can call like emotional or mental heaviness. And it usually gets worse in most people with age. If there is no way of creating space, the mind just gets crowded. Because you just continue your strategies. Excuse me. The strategies start somewhere, usually quite young, and then you just continue and they just carry more. They branch out, they get more complicated. You have more relationship to it. And you have so many branches after a while. And this is why the mind becomes heavy with the time. So the whole idea of self-inquiry and looking at the root of the thoughts, where they come from, who they relate to understand that the idea of the person is an idea, becomes so important, because that is the root of all these branches. And if you start to just doubt, you start to question the idea of the person, it shakes the whole tree. It makes you look at it completely differently. It's not something strange, it's not something foreign, it's not an imposed idea. It's just to look at the fundamentals of your experience. When we talk about it, it sounds so much like a thing. You understand what I mean by that? It sounds like when we talk about it, it sounds like a method. Or, yes, I tried this psychological method, or I tried this therapy thing, or I did this and this. But it's not like that. We're examining the mechanics of what we call ourselves. And this examination of it is nothing more than just being as you are. So the method is really, really easy. It's a really short book. But what makes it complicated, and what makes it difficult, and what makes almost everyone go to strategies when it comes to this, is because of the egoic mind and the idea of the person. And we have to understand that that relationship is quite complicated. My guru said it beautifully. He said, if you have a thorn in your finger, you can take another thorn to remove the thorn, and then you throw them both away. This is a way of explaining how you inquire into your mind to create space. Not to create more thoughts, not to create another strategy, but to create space. And actually, everything that you practice in meditation should have that effect. If you have to uphold something forever and ever, that is not meditation. That is not true meditation. It can be called meditation in certain traditions, but from my point of view, that is not meditation. Meditation always leads to spaciousness of mind. There should always be a natural resolve to things, that it comes to an end, not that it needs upholding or continuation. And some things might seem so strange that they are that. In my experience, when I started to realize that I didn't have trust into anything larger than myself. I thought that I could do it. Everything that comes in my way with meditation, I thought, I can do that. I am capable. I can do it. But one part of meditation is to understand that you are not in control. So how do you abandon that control? Because control always implies a controller, a manifested egoic thing. And in my mind, it felt like a thing to have faith. To trust in something great felt like an idea. It felt like something that I had to create and impose. But in practice, it is to relax. It is to trust. It's not a faith or empty rituals that you have to uphold in any way. Even if you do something in the relative world. But what happens here is the importance of it. Because to this idea of the person that is carrying this life that most people walk around with, this feeling of upholding my life, it is very heavy, and it's not true. Life is unfolding. It is just happening. But there is no one that it is happening to. That one is invented time and time again. That is something that is upheld. And if you just believe in my words, it's okay, but it doesn't do much. The best is if you look, if you recognize that what I am saying is true. Are all things transient? What is permanent in the experience? Do you understand why that matters? Why that is a very relevant question. Because if something is coming and going, if the idea of you is coming and going, how can you, and you can observe this coming and going, how can you be that? How can you be a phenomena that you can observe? You cannot be a phenomena. You have to be the observer. And if you look for this observer, you could say you have a sense that you are the body. But the body can also be recognized as a phenomenon. You can be aware of the body. So, but to most people this feels very abstract, because you want to pinpoint where this new observer is. So some people make up that it has a place in the body, that it is some kind of very subtle phenomena. You could call it, they call it the Atman or the soul or something, and it's somewhere. And it's very difficult to grasp that awareness itself doesn't have a place where it comes from. It just feels like, and it has no real qualities, like we talk about qualities in the phenomena world, in the relative world. You cannot smell it, you cannot hold it, you cannot grasp it. It cannot be destroyed. Nothing can be taken away from it. Nothing can be added to it. We can continue forever like this. But you understand what I mean. It's not a phenomenon. And we can just recognize it because it gives the sense of I. It gives the first sense of I before it is attached to a thought of a person. It is I before your body, before your gender, before your name, all of this. And if you're completely taken by your thoughts and very identified, you might be confused if it's even real. It feels like there's just thoughts. And I just have to follow them. And I have to make these harsh decisions that the strong identification always creates. Are you against this, or are you pro? It's always like that. The mind, when it's very identified, becomes very black and white. And in the spaciousness, there is just allowing the unfolding to happen. If there has to be a decision, it will be made. If something has to happen, it happens. If there is a lot of effort needed, that will be provided. All these things. But it's not from the standpoint of upholding. And all people move between these states. They might call it very, very simplified, having a good or a bad day. If they have a really good day, people can be really negative or say bad things, and it just slides off. And on a bad day, everything it's super hard. That is identification. I just want to be very clear that people are not looking for different things. Everyone is looking for happiness, for freedom. But they just think that it is hidden somewhere in the external. And I just have to recognize the right things and collect some things in these shapes and colors that are here. And then you're obsessed by something there, and you put so much energy into that. So it's well worth looking at. But what if you are the source of happiness? But to the egoic mind, that feels so big. Because it places you in the center, where if you come from a religion, you would have placed God. Suddenly you are God. You are godliness. You are that happiness. You are that light. But this is true. We are the source of the experience. And if we want to go one layer deeper, we could say we're all the same source. There is nothing personal. And you could say, yes, sounds nice. Maybe I will try to practice meditation. But what is the practical application of it? Or the practical consequences of it? We call it non-dual meditation. Because what happens with the egoic mind is that it sees itself as separate. It creates duality in everything. It creates we and them. It creates what I'm thinking about and considers myself as a thinker. And there already is the creation of duality. And this fragmentation of the mind that is just normal and rampant and everywhere is what creates all wars, all conflicts, everything. It is the most profound thing to look at. Hands down. And almost everyone is overlooking it. They think it must be in the external somehow. And since our senses are turned that way, that is where most people look. And it also takes something completely different to look inside. Because if you want to look inside, you have to start to be truthful. You have to be with all the things that you don't like. Everything that you suffer from just sitting, doing nothing. You have to face that. And I understand that many people don't want that. It's all right. I understand that you might feel like you want to distract yourself. But if you're interested in real change and to understand the root of conflict and fragmentation, is great to look inside. It changes everything. It changes the relationship to everything in a very beautiful way. And if you have dispositions for a certain type of creativity, and they usually just blossom in that, because suddenly there is so much space. There's so much playfulness. And if that wants to be expressed, it will be. And I think from the outside, the meditator can seem so dry. It can seem so dry and controlled. Many people think that I am so controlled. I've heard that many times. Oh, you're so disciplined. You're so controlled. And I have no sense of that at all. There's just playful chaos. Because I think the idea is that meditation somehow controls the mind. I think this is a very, very common idea. Okay, you're witnessing your mind to control it. You concentrate to control it, and then you're like some kind of super disciplined. But that is not what happens. It just gives you a lot of space. It's just very spacious. And creativity becomes very easy. Playfulness comes very easy. Heaviness goes quickly. But it's not a disciplined life in that sense. It's much more important to be sincere with it than to be disciplined. There's so many disciplined people in spirituality that I've met over the years. They're sitting so many hours, but the whole focus becomes from the idea of that you are a meditator meditating. It's just other people in the apartment. And this idea of being a good meditator is not the most important aspect of meditation. It's much more important to really look, to really be sincere, to really inquire into what is the core of things. I think there's a lot of people meditating that think that they are not disciplined enough, right? If I only did a little bit more, if I could sit more, if I could sit longer, if I could this and this. And all these things just strengthen the idea of the person meditating. The idea of the meditator. So sometimes the relaxation comes from not trying. When you no longer try to become something in meditation. Just be aware of it. It's so easy to think that I just have to have this little thing of more effort, but it's much more a heart thing. It's much more intuitive. And if you start to follow this, if you're used to rationalizing everything, it will feel strange. And you might be confused about it, and you might say things like, yeah, I used to be very heady, but now I always go with my gut. And that just means that you move your impulse response from your thoughts to your emotions. But it has nothing to do with intuitive. This is quite common. Because the intuitive sense is not, it doesn't always feel like the thing you want, but it goes just one step deeper. It's the thing that says to do things that challenges you. It is, if you dare to listen to it sometimes, that sometimes it just states the super obvious. It's in your face always, but you don't want to see it. That kind of sense. Those are qualities that come with the intuitive sense. It has the longing that the intuitive sense can have is also usually very wholehearted. The longings that come from the mind, from thinking, they're usually they have like rules, and they have like preferences, they have all these things. But the intuitive sense is just, give me everything. And this, of course, scares the shit out of the mind. So usually they're not in sync initially. And the more you trust intuitive sense, the more life can sometimes feel strange, because you just follow it and you don't know why, but you just know that it is right. You might even do something for a while and you have no idea what the outcome of it is, but there's just openness, a quality of openness in it. And this is very beautiful. But it requires trust. And when you start to follow it and you notice that it opens a lot of things, things happen that you could never think of, then you start to trust. Because this intuitive sense itself is the existential longing to know yourself. That is the depth of it. We can use any fancy description of it, but in its experience, it's very, very simple. Because it's not smart like the mind. It has much more of a bhakti quality to it. It just wants to embrace everything. And it doesn't have to understand. And there is a great freedom there. It wants to know, but it doesn't have to understand. Can you follow me? It doesn't need a fancy explanation. It can just the human potential for peace is so vast, because it would be quite small if happiness and sadness were just two emotions, were just two clouds. And I think that is the way that most people assume that their life is. That they have to go out there somewhere and find happiness and bring it home. Catch it somehow. And then if they caught it, the object that they assume is the carrier of the happiness has to be kept. So if you feel happiness with your partner, you can never lose your partner. And that is, of course, also a suffering. But we have the idea that it lies somewhere else. And even if a person creates great joy and happiness in you, that happiness is still coming from you. It is not connected to the external phenomena, even if you associate it with that. Because I'm just saying that because so many people, when they externalize this, it's so brutal, because they put their happiness in a person, and if that person goes, their happiness goes. And if you believe that, you will suffer that. And this kind of fragmentation, this kind of separation of your qualities is the reality for many people. And when you start to recognize that happiness that you carry comes from you, it doesn't make everything nice. It's not nice to lose someone close to you, but you understand that your happiness is not completely determined by that. And that makes the relationship to grief and the love that you can feel for that person, all those things just comes much easier. Otherwise, you have to play this whole thing with a fragmented mind, and you have lost your happiness and all this. And it doesn't mean that you don't need people. People have their roles in the relative it plays. In a situation, you are the one who's giving, or you're receiving, or whatever happens. And also with the intuitive sense, all these things can play very fluidly. They can just happen when they need to happen. Something needs to come, or something needs to go. It can move very easily. life is not without suffering or without its problems or difficulties or challenges. But it's also very, very beautiful. And that space that gives that beauty. Our idea for many, I think many people's idea of something that is very beautiful is not space. It is a thing that you can hold on to that is beautiful. But the most beautiful is the space that holds everything. Because its quality lends its quality to everything. When there is deep silence and you walk in the forest, you can cry because the forest is so beautiful. Because there is nothing, there is no separation between the forest and you. And the beauty of beingness is lent to into everything. It just blends into everything. Okay. Is there any questions today? Yes. Take the microphone, please.
I could really relate to the stuff you said about awareness being a thing, being trying to grasp it as a something. I think that I often identify with the stillness and makes it into something like a more grandiose, egoic mind, being the observer in a location, trying to understand it in somehow still, which makes the sky and the clouds a duality. But you once told me that awareness is a no-nomenon. So that, I guess that's the reason why it's not a duality, because it's not two things.
Yes.
So can it be experienced?
And the first question is, who is the experiencer? Because when you say, can it be experienced, what are you looking from? You understand?
Yeah.
You're a meditator looking for awareness as a phenomenon. And since it's not a phenomenon, and it is you, it is a strange question.
Yes. And a strange answer. It's when we say it's me or it's you and it's our true nature or true reality or big self or true self, it's so easy to identify with.
Yes, you make that into a phenomena, like an idea of what it is. And the same as that, a thing that is very common is that people say that they experienced the awareness, but they lost it. And that is also creating it, of course, making it into a phenomena. Because then you say the experience I have of stillness is connected to the awareness. But awareness doesn't need those preferences to be. It will be, awareness will be, even if you're completely identified with all the thoughts in your mind and you feel like you have a terrible day, you're still operating from awareness. But you just believe very thoroughly that you are something else in that moment. And in other instances, you're more unsure. And this uncertainty creates the spaciousness that makes you say, I feel happy today. I feel content today. That is one of the qualities in that is uncertainty. And I know for many people that sounds like a very negative, to feel uncertain feels negative from the mind's point of view. But the non-defined nature of it is in line with the qualities of awareness.
But could it also be a trap, thinking to make it into something? Because I also remember you once told me that we need to say anything about it, otherwise we would just be quiet. But the true teaching could be done in the silence in a way.
Yes.
I think the fact that we call it awareness it's easy for me or others maybe as well to make it into a something.
Yes.
And
I think that is also an avoidable part of it.
Unavoidable, or
unavoidable.
Yeah.
Because I think that you have to you use your mind and you try to make sense of it. And since all other things are things, that is what you go to. You think that in some way this is also a thing. Some sense of it has some phenomenal nature of it. Until you realize that it does not.
So it's nothing.
In a sense.
The sense of I, the sense of I before thought, that stillness.
Yes. What is that? Is that a phenomena? Look at it now.
No, it's a sense.
And what is that sense? Is that sense a phenomena? You asked for the attributes of awareness.
I would say it's not a feeling. It's just a subtle sense of being, in a way. The first experience of all experience, in a way.
And when you say that, what is your experience? What are you? What is the definition?
There's no more than that. It's not me and what that is. It's just being, in a way that I can't really describe. But then my question is, as Nisargadatta said, the I am sense will also be seen as an illusion. Beyond the I am, beyond the I.
Yes.
And only the absolute will be left.
Yes.
So isn't that I, that sense of I, the non-verbal, the space before the thought, the sense of being before a thought or idea, isn't that also an illusion?
Everything that is perceived as a phenomena is a phenomena and can be perceived. So because the mind can play this game forever. You can refer to the awareness as Brahman, and then you can say para Brahman, beyond Brahman. And then you talk about that, and it forms some kind of phenomenal sense in your mind, and you start to say para Brahman or para Brahman. Because that is how the mind plays with it. It is only in being. It is not, it's never in a concept. And as soon as concept is touched, it becomes something. It becomes something. But we're so used to identification in our approach to something that we cannot shake that when we try to find the source of it. Because you will see the world as you think, from the perspective of what you think that you are. So with identification, with the idea of I am the body, there is always a sense of separation. It will create two in things, and it will dissect the world also from that perspective. It's like, it's unavoidable. Even if you would lie to yourself and say, I am just pure awareness. I don't identify with the body. There is still the sense of bodiness and separation in that.
Yes, and I've almost like I regressed from first thinking I'm the thoughts and then I'm the body, until there was only I am. And then there's been identification with that I am, which makes it into something, which then is separate because it's a duality of something compared to nothing, and it's two. So where does this I am sense, the awareness, go in deep sleep? Or there was no I am sense in the 9 months in the mother's stomach? Then the I am sense comes and goes, and it can't be.
Yes, but that is the idea of the separateness of it. The beingness is not a phenomenon.
Yeah, I will probably never grasp this, right? Because you can't grasp something that isn't something. But it's in a way, though, it feels like it's been experienced, but not. I can't say it. It's been glimpses of it. It's been stillness. It's been.
Yes.
It's been
when you talk about also that there is glimpses of it, you say that it is a phenomenon that comes and goes. Yeah. You're again in the fragmentation of it, because how can awareness go? Let's look at it. How can awareness go? Where does it go? It can, of course, be, you can have the experience of something is obscured and you think very heavily that you are something else. But that is the idea of being the body, of being separate in the world. That is what that creates. And when that falls for a moment, it feels so radical to the egoic mind that you say, I had a profound spiritual experience. But you just, for a little while, were not identified completely as the body and the thoughts.
And is that an experience?
That is, of course, an experience and a memory of the experience now. But it usually still relates quite heavily to the egoic mind, which make things of it, which says it has that it has some profound meaning, or that it was a big moment and I have to come back to it, or whatever it is. All these things. So it completely goes into the egoic body of separateness and just continues there. So it's not so, in that sense, it's not so profound. It's not profound in that sense. It's just that the root have been shaken a little bit. And in actuality, the peacefulness that can seem much more mundane can in some ways be much deeper and closer to this awareness. Many people, when they sit in meditation, they long for fireworks, but in great boredom is also on the very close to this edge, because in boredom you have start to dissolve the sense that nothing is going to happen. You can have all these feelings of stuckness and it can be very, very deep, because you sense the qualities of the awareness as unmoving, and to the egoic mind that can feel stubborn, impossible, because from the egoic mind it always wants to crack the nut, like you're trying now. How can I crack this nut? Please help me. How can I crack it? But it's not a nut to be cracked. That is not what is happening. Nut cracking can happen inside of it. It's prior to that. It's like you're asking, can you show me the sky? And then you're only talking about the clouds. And that becomes an impossibility, because they are on different levels. It is not like the clouds and the sky is two parts of something. The clouds are part of, they're included in sky, the concept of sky.
So, if there's no identification with the sky, why do we say that that is what we are?
Yes, because we are not something that is identified. Because as soon as there is identification, there is separation. Because there has to be someone identified with something. So beingness cannot be identified with as something, or awareness, whatever we want to call it.
So it sounds a lot like in the Buddhist teaching they talk about anatta, or the no self. And it sounds a lot like that. The true self, the capital S self,
Yes.
the no self. It's because it gets me confused, because when I listen to all these different teachings with Rupert Spira or Mooji or they talk about the I am sense, and then Nisargadatta say the I am sense will also fall away, and the Buddhists say the I am sense is also illusion, no
Yes.
self. So it's a grandiose identification.
Yes,
ego part.
and it is difficult to listen to different teachers in that sense. And different teachers would use different words, and it becomes very difficult when you think that the word is the thing. And the more you can let go of that and have a feeling that the word is just pointing towards the thing.
Is there a thing?
In the sense that the thing that we are talking about. But if we talk about awareness, we talk about something that is not the thing.
I think it's so confusing to talk about a no thing, and some
Yes.
teachings say it as a nothing, which makes it a bit more clearer. But then I'm confused if that they're pointing at the same nothing. I'm just sharing here. If there's a more important question,
but
we could.
I understand that this can be confusing. But the experience of it is not.
Thank you.
Yes, because words can be... We can talk about it in 1,000 different ways. We can define it. We can talk about what it's not. All these things. And it is helpful to a point. But when I talk to you, I feel like there has to come a point where you give up. Where you give up the nut cracking. And you just, okay, this is not working. But that is usually very difficult, because that is your tool. That is how you approach things. So until you realize that it doesn't work in this case, because it works in many other cases, but doesn't work in this case, and you get super frustrated and you feel stuck for a while and you feel completely confused about it. Is it really a not phenomenon? What is it? All these ideas about it. Is there any purpose to the practice? All these things. Can you do it? What is there to do? What is the work? All these things. And what we meet is our own ways of approaching it. Our own unique dualistic flavor of trying to solve something. That will be met in this. And it's not always nice. It's not a nice revelation sometimes. Sometimes it's a complete frustration and stuckness, and then you give up, and then there is relief. But it's not in the way that you think that it will go. The mind wants to perceive things as I'm approaching this and I'm solving this and then I come to the solution somehow. They don't think that giving up, for example, is a part of it. That's just me being not good. You can have that sense. And all those things are valid parts on the spiritual path. And what you see also as non-spiritual, this draws me away from spirituality, or this can sometimes be the exact thing that is needed. And that can also be very confusing and feel very strange. Because it's so easy for the mind to compartmentalize. That you're one person in one context, and you're another person in another context, and this is the spiritual part of me, this is the non-spiritual part, all these kind of things. And suddenly it creates so much friction between them that you understand that the only thing there is to embrace all these identities that I have. And in that, you start to relax, and then awareness can shine. And it was not at all in this way that you thought that you would approach it. It relaxes in embracing all these dualities, inviting all these different personas that you have. All these things are there. I just want to take examples and show you, because it's so easy that we have a very rigid path, how things are going to unfold. I'm going to do this, and it's going to have these consequences. Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Very good. Let's sing something. Jai Jai Shri Radhe, Jai Jai Shri Radhe, Jai Jai Shri Radhe, Jai Jai Shri Radhe, Jai Jai Shri Radhe. Jai Shri Radhe, Jai 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 Jai Shri Radhe. 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 Jai Jai Shri Radhe, 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 Jai Jai Shri Radhe. May you find peace, happiness, contentment. May you not be distracted by everything in the external. And go with the longing to go within. The intuitive sense that guides you to trust, to allow, to not fight the river, but flow with it. Even when life takes you on things that you might experience as unfair or harsh. May you find peace. Thank you.